is nothing working? I tested this 1,000 times.
My name is Judith A. Harlow, 34, senior RAN engineer until approximately 5 minutes into a Monday all hands where the obituary of Mikery was read out loud without flowers or a fruit basket. I'd spent 10 years making other people's slides look smarter than their code, 10 winters smoothing an elegant logic until it ran quiet and clean, the kind of work that never trends on LinkedIn because it lives in the guts of systems. You don't see people like me in corporate promo reels where the invisible scaffolding. Gee, but on that morning, the spotlight found me anyway. The meeting tiles blinked to life. Lana appeared from the San Mateo office studio lighting, camera set high, a smirk with airbrushed confidence. She called the moment a transition quarter, a phrase that in our industry means someone else will pay for leadership's last bet. Her deck slid into place. Alignment direct. Eyes for future-facing teams. She announced a full return to on-site. Collaboration no warning. No discussion. Just that's the culture now, as if culture could be decreed like a parking policy. People star. Ed. I blinked, because for 3 straight quarters my logistics Ed Pilot had outperformed sales projections from a basement office where my robe and cat-themed slippers had more tenure than half-hour VPS. Results, turned out, had begun to matter less than visibility. Then came the policy that made my molars grind. All RAN prototypes and early-stage concepts will be logged in the shared repository, she said, with full source files, technical notebooks, and timestamps. My office will review origin points for patent filing consolidation, effective immediately. Consolidation, such a benign, polished word for what builders call theft. There are 2 ways corporate takes what you've made: loudly, with a reorg, or quietly, with a paper trail. This was the quiet way. The policy way, the we own what's yours because we say it, counts as ours way. I unmuted, calm enough to hear my pulse. Clarification, I said, does this apply to projects developed the outside work hours on personal equipment? Lana's smile grew teeth. Judith, if you're developing solutions relevant to Alaric Systems roadmap, we assume it's within our scope. Eve, and if no Alaric time, hardware, or collaborators were used, she laughed like HR had taught her empathy, but neglected respect. If you don't like the new policies, Judith, you can just resign and go. Silence followed like a drop tray. On my screen, my junior dev, Marcus the 2-finger typist with the kindest heart stopped mid-keystroke. The part of me that believes in institutions wanted to argue. The rest of me, older, data-driven, done smiled. Thanks for the exit strategy, I said, and clicked in. What I lifted from my desk could fit in a box and a short paragraph. A ceramic penguin mug with a chip on the bill. 2 notebooks, crowded with half-born algorithms and passive-aggressive doodles of words like synergy and moonshot. A small wooden plaque my mini Darla had burned by hand, queen of workarounds. I left my monitor. I left the mouse. I even left the ergonomic keyboard I bought with my own money because the company issued one-clickly. Cat tap dancing termite on espresso. Let Lana keep it. She needs something to hold on to when the floor disappeared. I didn't throw a scene. I didn't slam a door. I walked the corridor with a box in my arms and a 1,000-mile stare, the kind that makes people whisper like they're in church. Darla hurried after me, cheeks pale, her eyes buffering. Judith, what's happening? Where you going? I pressed the elevator button. Stay, I said, steady as concrete. Observe, the doors slid open. She stood there chewing a lip that suddenly looked younger than her resume. I didn't add we talked about this eventuality or that you can't fix a system designed to misattribute credit upward. I didn't tell her that compliance policies, framed in glass, can be crowbars or shields, depending on who holds them. The doors closed before I could decide whether warning her would help. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a person in the building is show them what the exit looks like. Outside, October sun stabbed the parking lot into hard light. Asphalt smelled like warmed over rubber and old ambitions. I popped the trunk. My box met an envelope I placed there 24 ho. hours earlier, stamped and sealed in quiet handwriting. Mark II, General Counsel, Alaric Systems. Inside was not a resignation, it was a declaration. It was timestamps and device IDs, it was Git Digest. As sent from a personal account tied to a grad school alias, it was witness forms and notary stamps and a video clip of me coding a core module with a radio station playing in the background, and the date burned into the corner. It was the legal fact that the engine they were prepping to unveil as Project Apex did not belong to them. Not metaphorically, literally for 11 months, nights, and weekends, I built it on my own hardware, paying for my own compute and coffee, meeting once a month with my old friend Robbie, now an adjunct professor, to walk through PR. Ogres. He countersigned witness forms. I notarized them, and filed copies in encrypted storage not accessible from any Alaric network. Paranoid. In this economy, paranoia is just experience with better branding. For some of us women, immigrants, the quiet ones who build while others brief, documentation isn't a habit, it's armor. People imagine walkouts as fury. Mine tasted like vanilla creamer and betrayal, then nothing at all. Because beyond the sting there was surgical quiet. In a company where visibility had become currency, I had chosen custody. They wanted me to feed him. Why go to a central repository where authorship goes to be laundered? I wanted to remain a person, not a pipeline. So I did what few expect from the person who brings lemon bars to birthdays. I prepared. You learn certain patterns when you grow up, adjacent to other people's certainty. The mandatory return to office policy wasn't about collaboration. It was about control of bodies, of time, of ideas, centralize people, centralize their outputs. The repository directive wasn't about knowledge sharing. It was about legal presumption, the institutional muscle that says, we hold your work. Therefore, it is ours, but the law still cares about provenance, about who built what, when, and with whose tools. And I have receipts so clean a toddler could walk them to court. At the trunk, I slid the white envelope into a second, already stamped. Twin, because redundancy is a love language in both systems design and self-protection. One would hit GC via internal mail, the other would travel a different path. If you think that's dramatic, you've never had a VP arrive from a rival company with a loophole-laced NDA and a memory stick full of ambition in a world where credit is a ladder and consequence an elevator shaft. You don't leave without building your own staircase. Darla's text arrived before I turned the key. Lana just asked if you left F or lunch. I didn't answer. I drove. The city passed in reflective surfaces, office glass, brake lights, a selfie flash in the adjacent lane. That's the thing about being invisible for long enough. You learn how to move without friction. My destination wasn't home. Home is for exhale. I needed witness. I needed official. Oakway Commons sat between a dentist and a vape shop that looked like it sold regrets. Boo. It had what I required. Anonymity and Phil. A notary who didn't ask questions as long as the signatures were neat and the coffee was hot. Phil would meet me with a nod and an ink stamp, and the rest the chain of custody, the uploads. The filings would tick forward like a clean loop. I wasn't going to fight in Slack or plead in one-on-ones. I don't fight. I file. And when institutions treat your mind as inventory, the most radical act is to prove you are a person with a name on a patent. As the light turned green, I caught myself smiling, not triumph, not even relief, something steadier, precision. In a culture that rewards spectacle, I had chosen to be exact. They had given me an exit. I had given myself a record. Thanks for the exit steamer. A to G, I thought, and pressed the accelerator. Oakway Commons doesn't look like the birthplace of a legal earthquake. It looks like a place where freelancers sip lukewarm coffee, where calendars are written in dry erase marker, where ambition wears hoodies. The lobby smells faintly of toner and optimism. I park under a fading maple and step into air conditioning that tastes Ike lemons and new beginnings. Phil is at the counter, as reliable as the watermark on a government seal. His tie is wrong for a cool working space inky blue, tight knot, like he misplaced a law firm and never went back to find it. Looks like someone's got a big day, he says, sliding a notary ledger onto the glass. Let's make it official. I answer and place the folder on the counter like it's heavier than paper. In a way, it is. People imagine patents as brilliant epiphanies trapped in legalese. The truth is humbler and more dangerous. A patent is a timeline, a chain of custody for thought. Phil flips to today's date. We begin the dance ID check. Signature, signature again. Initials where tiny arrows demand the soft thud of his stamp. I lay out the P. S in order because order is the point. 3 provisional. Applications, predictive reading engine, load balancing matrix refinements, and the ghost protocol, the back-end logic that makes the other two sing. In key instead of shouting in parallel. Witnesses. He asks. 2. I say Ravi, and the time itself. Phil doesn't smile, but the corner of his mouth approves. S. He knows the ritual. He passes me a form for the notarized attestations. I sign, and he signs, and the room feels a few degrees more precise. When you've been made invisible for long enough, precision is oxygen. From the folder, I pull a USB drive and place it in the tray. The drive holds snapshots of the thing they thought they could call theirs, dated videos of me coding core modules with a local radio station in T. Heat background, the time and date burned into the corner, Git digest tied to a personal account with a graphical alias. Hashes of build artifacts mirrored to encrypted storage outside of lyrics. Network, a spreadsheet of device IDs that have never once touched a corporate VPN. Paranoia. No hygiene. There are incinerators disguised as policy. You learn to proof yourself flame retardant. Phil slots tea. He drive into the intake tower that oak way. Commons uses for attorney drop boxes. The terminal chimes. On the screen, folders appear with names as plain as bread rotting core, load matrix, ghost proto. He runs the checksum program I requested. Last month, a little belt tan suspender script to verify every file's integrity against my hash list. All green, he uploads the packages to the encrypted attorney portal we prearranged with Eliza, Trent's office, and to the independent archival network Eliza recommended, the one that timestamps submissions across multiple nodes like you're teaching a courtroom to read a clock. 3 receipts. Phil says, printing out confirmations to portals and the archive. Plus 1 for general counsel at a lyric. DD, tapping the paper envelope I'm about to drop like a letter addressed to the future. Proof is useless if it lives only with your friends. It has to survive in enemy territory too. While printers murmur, I sign a last set of pages, the formal declarations for each provisional. Provisional is a word people like Lana misunderstand. They think it means flimsy. What it means is you mark your place in line. You plant a flag with a date, and the law remembers it's a heartbeat on a timeline, and when an organization later pretends your heart never beat, the registry says otherwise. Phil slides me a ceramic mug that declare S-World's okayest notary, coffee, he offers. Please, I say, because if we're building a spine, it may as well be caffeinated. We wait while the archive pings backets, network stamp confirmations, the screen blossoming into checkmarks feels like a choir clearing its throat. On the counter, I line up the confirmations next to the notes I brought for Eliza. There's a paragraph I added at 3 a.m. the week Lana arrived, when she rewrote the NDA intake template for efficiency. Efficiency, in her hands, had Ollie loosen a lyrics claim over pre-existing IP developed by E. Employees outside active contract obligations. She was Consolidating power, sure, but she was also poking holes in her own bucket. I highlighted the clause then. Today, I underline it twice and add a sticky note that reads, leverage the printertures. Phil stacks the receipts, clips them, stamps the top sheet with a seal that leaves a faint sunburst in the paper. He drops a duplicate set into a locked case behind the desk. It clicks shut like a period at the end of a sentence we've labored to make grammatical. Anything else? He asks. Chain of custody letters to L. Isa and the Independent Archive. I say, and I need you as notary on Robbie's monthly witness forms through year end. Phil nods. Standing appointment, he says, writing my name into a margin only. He can decipher. People watching from the outside will call this vindictive. It isn't. It's geometry. Draw the shape of what happened. Fix its angles. Name its lines. Corporate culture teaches a different geometry. Stretch the shape until the bottom connects to the top. Call that alignment. After a decade inside the trapezoid, you learn to carry a ruler. As Phil processes the last form, my phone hovers on the counter, screen face down, buzzing occasionally, with the frantic tempo of a building in denial. A message from Darla peeks through. Did you really mean it? Are you not coming back? I think of telling her the truth, that I have rarely left a place by standing so still, but I text only 3 words. Stay, observe. Documentation isn't just for code. Sometimes it's the only way to ease. You're the distance between what leaders claim and what they do. The archive's final confirmation pings. Eliza's office portal flashes received. I forward her the parallel package with a note. USPTO submissy. On's ready when you are. She moved fast. Faster than a lyric slaughters expect a quiet engineer to move. That's the other geometry thing, velocity. A clean chain of custody accelerates in ways panic never can. I tuck the receipts into the folder and breathe for the first time since the elevator doors closed on Darla's face. Outside, the afternoon burnishes to a softer metal. Through the front windows, I watch 2 teenagers argue gently about whose turn it is to refill the paper towels at the co-work sink. Just beyond them, a dentist sign blinks a toothpaste blue smile over the vague shop's neon. The city hums at the register. Where ordinary and official meet. That's where this story belongs, not in a grand courtroom montage, but in a tidy lobby where a notariess tamps the past into the present. I leave Phil with a thank you and step into the hall where the walls display startup posters with slogans that feel like fortune cookies that did CrossFit. Build boldly, iterate kind. Lee, ship truth. I resist a laugh because the joke isn't funny. Build boldly. Yes, but carry a map. Iterate kindly, sure, but write down where you started and who paid for the gas. Chai. P truth. Phil just did in the parking lot. The light has moved, turning the maple shadow into a long green arrow pointed at the future. I slide into the driver's seat, and the car greets me with the faint vanilla of old coffee and the paper. Smell of law, the envelope for Alaric's general counsel ride shotgun, pale and polite as an apology they'll never make. I think of Lan, a smile through the camera, the easy confidence of someone who mistakes headcount control for leadership and policy for authorship. She believes that centralizing bodies centralizes ideas. She's half right. It centralizes risk. I pull out and head for the post office branch that still hand cancels priority envelopes. Because if you're going to build a record, build one with ink that smudges if tea, ouched too soon and dries if left alone. At a red light, a flock of ducks sprawls over a torn bagel on the strip of grass by the lake. It's always about the bagel, never the pond. I make a knot. In my head, remember to tell this part later. When people ask how it felt like ducks. It felt like a bagel that didn't belong to anyone suddenly becoming the whole argument. At the counter, the clerk stamps the envelope with a thunk. That sounds like punctuation. I watched the date bloom in purpling, a moment made legible. Back in the car, I set the phone face up. A new Mail from Eliza. Receipts verified. Proceeding with USPTO. E-file. She adds one line. No frills. Willful is our friend. I drive to the lake and park beneath the same tree as always. The water glitters. Like a spreadsheet you actually want to open. I am not angry. Anger is expensive and imprecise. I am exact. They ask for alignment. I wrought a level. They ask for cinder. Alization. I wrought a ledger. They ask for visibility. I brought timestamps. In the distance, a child throws bread at the ducks and laughs when they scrap like traitors at open. Somewhere across town, an all-hands thread is filling with bright emojis over. Grayscale panic. Somewhere in San Mateo, a camera is being adjusted to the angle that flatters denial. Here, the wind lifts a corner of my receipt, and then lays it back down as if to say, stay. Observe. I do. The first draft of the thing that would detonate a product roadmap was drawn in a diner that smelled like maple syrup and motor oil. Kent, off the highway, the kind of place where the coffee refills itself and the waitress calls you hun without irony. It was 11 months before Alana sipped her way into our org chart. 11 months. Before someone turned my blueprint into a marketing deck with a name that sounded like a protein powder. I sat in a corner booth under a framed photo of a Little League team from 1998 and de-enrolled a legal pad. Loops, nodes, arrows, black ink that bled slightly on cheap paper, and there it was, a reading brain that could read disruptions like weather reads arrive. Root, a load balancer that didn't just react but anticipated, and something quieter threading between them like a ghost. A logic that moved so lightly it left no footprints in the silt. The napkin came first. Of course, coffee stained, edges torn. I folded it into the legal pad like you tuck a child into a bed you're not sure you can afford. Back at my apartment, I moved to my personal laptop, different machine, different network, a sanctified distance from anything that could be argued company adjacent hand started building. Not shouting, stitching. My commit messages were dull on. Purpose, refine underscore loop underscore 03, hysteresis underscore threshold underscore T. Week, ghost underscore and underscore C. Every push went to a private remote under a grad school alias I kept alive like a houseplant you forget, then remember, then water at exactly the right time, once a week. I generated a digest of changes hashes, timestamps, diff stand, emailed it to a personal address only I used, belt and suspenders. Yes, and maybe a third belt. This world teaches certain people women. The quiet, the ones not groomed for the stage to carry extra straps. Every month, I met Ravi at a campus coffee bar that smelled like ambi, Thailand and burned beans. He teaches now adjunct, which is academic for brilliant and overworked, and he has a way of looking at your coat like a mechanic listening to an engine with the hood up. We'd sit with a laptop between us, my repo open, changelog scrolling, and I'd walk him through the curve of the thing. When it sang, he'd say so. When it scraped, he'd race. An eyebrow. Then he'd sign a witness form noting what we reviewed. Where? When? I notarized the forms the same day. File them where lawyers can find them later without squinting. Paranoia. No, this was carpentry. Measure. Twice. Then measure again because the house you're building is on land someone else believes they own. 6 months in, the rooting skeleton could carry weight. I fed it open source shipping data sets. Public, clean, forked under permissive licenses that my readme cited with the gratitude of a person who knows she stands on the shoulders of colleagues she never meet. The engine learned delays. Like an old mariner reads currents, nudging roots. Around storms, rebalancing loads without throwing the whole system into panic. At 2 in the morning, on a Tuesday no one will ever memorialize, I watched a simulation dodge a synthetic road closure and restitch itself without losing a beat. I leaned back and laughed once, small and disbelieving, the way you do when a theory becomes a body. I tested the ghost protocol as a whisper, not a shout. Ghosts are for the spaces between, the silent glue, a fallback redundancy logic that looked at what the system didn't know yet and filled th. EGAT without announcing itself. You don't commit a ghost to a public repo if you can help it. Not in a culture where idea custodians and credit harvesters attend the same meetings and wear the same lanya. RDS. I kept the sharpest parts in shorthand notes on legal pads and 5-line scripts on an air-gap drive in my head. Not because I'm a romantic about genius, but because I'm a real. It's about theft. It wasn't all code. It was also law. I made an appointment with Eliza Chen, former mid-tier defense contractor IP attorney who carries herself like she's negotiated with dragons and been bored by them. Her office smelled like paper and peppermint. I laid out everything, the grad school alias commits with timestamps. The video of my screen with the local radio DJ talking about snow on a day that indeed snowed, the notarized witness forms, the device I dissed that had never touched an Alaric VPN. The open source attributions, the hardware receipts with my name on them, not the C. Companies, she didn't blink, she did not perform malware. Skepticism, she did what professionals do. She mapped the terrain, found the edges, and told me where to plant flags. These are yours, she said, thumbs drumming once on the folder. We'll file 3 provisional applications routing, load balancing, and the backend logic. Filed under your personal name. No corporate ties. We triple check every clause so there is no backdoor. She recommended an independent archival network, the kind that notarizes time across multiple nodes, so an argument can't accuse a C. Angle server of forgetting. She sent me away with templates and a list. Footage angles to capture during coding, hash routines to wrap into a digest, a practice for mic cadence that reads more like clockwork. K than inspiration, ownership in the courts, is as much about how you walk as it is about where you arrived. At work, I said nothing. Alaric likes the drumbeat of a reveal more than th. Clean line of an argument. The org learned to love buzzwords because investors clap for them. And sliding decks do not crash on stage the way DMOS do. I fixed other people's code and wrote the prose that made it look inevitable. I watched proposals, with edges get shaved till they fit a slogan. My predictive engine had been too in the weeds for sales to understand. The weeds were, where the water is, the board prefers sprinklers. There are ethics here, too. Beyond the law, I stood on open source. I wrote my acknowledgments like prayers and kept the licenses where anyone could. See, I didn't fork from Alaric repos. Not once. I didn't use company machines or cloud credits. I built on evenings when my friends were at trivia, on Saturday mornings when the city felt like a held breath. People ask, later, if I built it out of spite. Spite is a flash in a pan. This was endurance. Also, self-respect. A person who can build a clean, legal engine that outperforms the BuzzVo. RD's cousin should not have to ask permission to be credited for it. The day Alana arrived, I felt a draft. People like her are weather confidence that announces itself as climate. She smiled with the precision of someone trained to test fences. She streamlined our NDA templates in week 1, and in the streamlining, she loosened language around pre-existing IP developed off contract. I read the new clause twice, then a third time, then highlighted it in neon inside my head. In her quest to consolidate, she had widened a crack. My work was already outside the walls. Now the wall admitted the hole when Alaric rolled out. Project Apex, complete with glossy full bleed banners and a tagline that read like a startup's promise to your parents' eye. Watched the internal video and nearly choked on my reheated lunch. The features were not cousins to my engine. They were my engine's silhouette traced onto a larger sheet. Anyone who has ever had their words P, a ref phrase in a meeting knows the exact temperature change that happens in your body, cold, then clear. The napkin and cant, the commits, the logs, the notarized forms, the independent timestamps. It all fell into the shape of a plan, not a fantasy. I didn't need to storm a room. I needed to finish the documentation, so I did. Eliza triple-checked every clause, then filed 3 provisional patents under Judith A. Harlow. She stamped time into the record in a way that even a board's selective memory couldn't sand down. We mirrored the filings across the independent nodes. We archived the evidence so boringly that even a judge would feel soothed. I took the train home that night past windows full of other people's lives and thought about the difference between invention and preservation. One builds a door, the other names it. I didn't tell anyone at work because it wasn't for them. It was for the version of me who once believed that if you just did the BS work, the best would happen. It was for the builders who meet under fluorescent lights to fix a failing demo while AVP practices her smile. It was for the napkin in a diner where a waitress named Cher kept refilling my cup like she understood that some nights require more coffee than advice. By the time the legal confirmations began to arrive, dates stamped, numbers assigned, that peculiar calm of bureau crazy turning in your direction, the system was already in motion. People think justice is a gavel. Sometimes it's a receipt. Sometimes it's 3 receipts, stapled, initialed, and filed in a folder with your name on the tab. I slid the folder onto my shelf between the paper bags and slept for 6 hours without dreaming of code. In the morning, I went back to work like nothing had happened. And in a way, nothing had. Not yet. The truth was now on paper, cold and patient. It could wait. I could, too. If you've never watched a corporation sprint on wet receipts, you haven't seen theater. The week after my filings were logged, Alaric ran breathless toward its moonshot. Lana rechristened the product Apex, as if a word could crown code not yet finished. In the internal video, her voice had that well-lit lift of a speaker who believes timing and adjectives can rescue an engine. 3 weeks to the Midwestern Tech Frontier Summit, she beamed, where we'll unveil a next-gen logistics intelligence suite. The comments filled with claps and rockets. Privately, engineers opened terminals and stared down error logs like fortune tellers reading a BL. Izzard, inside Slack, the scramble developed a smell cold coffee, overheated laptops, panic disguised as hustle. Threads bloomed at unholy hours. Who has vendor API credentials for the root simulator? Where are the original notes for balancing thresholds? Does anyone know if the fallback logic expects edge case flags in milliseconds or seconds? The question circle be the same absence. The map wasn't in the glove compartment. It never had been. Byron, done in the eyes and earnest in the hands, noticed first in a way that mattered. He DM'd a small group with the diplomacy of someone too junior to be heard and too decent not to try. Heads up, this routing module's origin predates the Apex repo by 4 months, he wrote, linking a commit. Dusty birth certificate. Looks like it was forked from a sandbox before the integration policy. The channel answered with the internet equivalent of a shrug until he followed up. Should I rewrite to be safe? 18 minutes later, Lana appeared in the thread like a high heel clicking across tile. We're under deadline. Keep moving. Deadlines over details. The phrase landed with the thud of a door prop. Paid open by metrics. Deadlines over details works when you're racing a press release. It does not work against physics or provenance. The balancing scripts, rewritten in a rush, began to misfire in Simulation L. Like fireworks set off in the rain. Tests that should have marched now wandered. Coverage dip. Synthetic loads that the engine should have handled with the grace of a ballet lift CR. Umpled like folding chairs, someone requisitioned contractors to reverse engineer logic they did not understand, and because contractors are professionals, they asked where the documentation lived. Silence is a place. The thread took them there. Meanwhile, the PR team did what PR teams do: design confidence. Lanyards were ordered with a QR code that went nowhere yet. A landing page, Doctor. Aft floated through approvals with a hero image of trucks gliding through a city at blue dusk. The kind of aspirational architecture where glass reflects only the sky. Taglines went from predictive adaptive, apex, to bold, brilliant, built for the future. I watched one of the videos after a friend slipped me a link and paused at the frame where a pseudo dashboard pulsed. With healthy greens, none of the numbers in the corners meant anything. They were placeholders in a font that photographs well. Recruiters began circling LinkedIn like ghouls, dropping messages to engineers acro SS Town with subject lines that read, "After the summit, let's talk." Investors were scheduled into private DMOS a week early, the kind where nothing is live but the hand gestures. The choreography was flawless. The sheet music was. Missing measures. On my side of the city, the lake decided to behave like a mirror. I sat in the car under the maple and watched a child fling bread toward a quarrel of ducks who fought as if that bagel were a stock option. I kept my phone face down because denial creates noise and precision needs quiet air to dry. When I flipped it over, there were notes from Eliza USPTO filings accepted. Timestamps registered and a single line from her that read, "Willful is our friend." I put the phone back and thought about how systems confuse speed for inevitability. If you go fast enough, the logic says, no one will ask for directions. This is rarely true off racetrack. By midweek, Apex had become a prayer wheel. Canenio, any find the vendor creds, turned up against a wall because the vendor creds lived in my head, where I kept them on purpose, like a mechanic who doesn't leave the keys in the ignition of a car S. He knows someone wants to steal. Is the fallback logic a shell? Or the real thing? Drew a haunting answer. Some functions are stubs. That was correct. I'd removed the heart months ago and replaced it with shells. Not sabotage, self-defense. You lock your door when you move out of a building, or someone once hinted they might repurpose your laptop. In an engineering huddle, a kind senior dev named Don Rita tried to thread the impossible needle. We can't keep hitting go on this. There are origin issues, and the logic tree is brittle. Someone from product, not unkind but trained in decraft, said, "The summit is the story. We'll fix the substance in V1.1. I have compassion for product." Their job is to braid the future out of today's hair, but coded, unlike mood, refuses to be manifested outside the code base. The culture did what cultures do when frightened. It wrote brighter emails. Apex, our moonshot went out with fireworks emojis and a soul. 8T reminder that return to office is fueling the collaboration. We need, the same hour, a junior ops manager pinged the rooting cluster with a synthetic surge and watched it buckle like a bridge under two. On Much Parade, he took a screenshot of the failure message and DM'd it to a friend of mine with the caption, "Do you think this is fine?" In the corner of his screenshot, a timestamp. P glowed. Even panic leaves metadata, the whisper network every company has. 1. Mostly women, a few men with long memories and no appetite for Kool-Aid started to purl. Wasn't this Judas sandbox? Someone typed in a private room, the way a person testing a floorboard puts down one toe. The message got forwarded, then forwarded, growing softer and truer in transit. No one would say it in a meeting, not why. But the room had changed density. That is a gas. It fills spaces leadership forgets to measure. Lana kept smiling because that is a VP's job until it isn't. She spoke in stand-ups about phase convergence and AI-native synergies like someone who had memorized a constellation and was surprised to find the sky is weather. She was not stupid, she was miscalibrated. A person who believed that owners hip can be announced louder than it can be proven. Perhaps it often can, but not when the receipts are notarized, mirrored, and timestamped like a heartbeat. A week before the summit, a contractor raised a flag with professional politeness. Origin mismatch between a core module and Apex repo. Recommend legal review. The reply came back. Noted, proceed. There are two kinds of proceed in a corporation. The one said by people who understand risk, and the one said by people trying to craft a Tuesday that gets them to Friday. This was the second kind. I didn't need to hurry. The filings were already logged. The envelope had already thudded into the GC's inbox with the weight of decision. I went for walks, washed dishes by hand, turned off my phone at night. PR. Decision is a long game. Rage burns fast and leaves ash. Documentation burns slow and leaves bones. When friends texted, "Are you watching this?" I answered, "I'm resting." Quick. H was half a joke and entirely true. On the Friday before Atlanta's Backstage, a small thread surfaced in an internal channel that someone kindly screenshotted for me. Byron again, bless him, this balancing protocol is failing. NG under stress loads. Half the function calls return. No, and the fallback logic isn't actually there, a B. Do we have original documentation for the fallback? The screenshot captured 3 minutes of silence, the digital equivalent of eyes, avoiding one another in a conference room before a product lead typed, "Let's focus on the demo path." The demo path is a museum tour where you never open a door that isn't already labeled art. Elsewhere, the summit organizers tweeted a photo of the exhibit floor mid-build, black pipe pan drape, ladders, rolling crates, glossy banners waiting to be unrolled. Booth number 207 lyrics sat across from two competitors who had quietly posted teaser videos about predictive fleet optimization. The caption read, 3 days until we unveil the future. Futures are best when they're not copyrighted by someone else. Sunday night, I sharpened the edges of my stillness. I checked Eliza's last note, then closed my laptop and put it under the bed like a tool you respect enough to be without. The city softened its sound. Somewhere in a hotel 3 neighborhoods away, a junior engineer ironed a polo and rehearsed a sentence that would keep his badge active. Somewhere in San Mateo, a ring light glared into a camera while a pitch was word tested for the 10th time against reality's resistance. I slept, not the sleep of the victorious, the sleep of a person who has cleaned their kitchen and laid out a map. Morning would come whether or not a lyrics demo did. Precision had already punched in at 7:42 a.m. on the Mont. I have Summit Week. The first letter landed with the warmth of a guillotine. Subject line, immediate halt of infringing activity, patent interference notification, case ID number 548 to Q9 to J, 6 pages. Single space on Eliza Trent, esque, letterhead. It cited 3 provisional filings under my name and laid them alongside Apex's core modules with the tenderness of a crime scene technician. Annotated screenshots, commit hashes, timestamp, comparisons, device IDs. A chain of custody for thought, stitched so plainly even a board's selective memory would trip on it. Corinne in general. Counsel forwarded it to a paralegal with a shrug and a subject line that read patent drama. Can someone look? Because she was still living in a world where Judith from Rand brought lemon bars and took meeting notes. 9 minutes later, a second letter arrived from a colder building, USPTO's routing server confirming acceptance of 3 provisional patents under Judith A. Low, filed 5 weeks prior. Title 35 came in like the weather. The keyword in Eliza's cover note was willful. Not angry, not offended. Willful in the language of courts. That word is a multiple. Here, it turns we didn't know until you knew and kept going, which is to say, it takes damages and teaches them to count by 3s. Inside a lyric, the air changed density. Emails flew like confetti in a wine tunnel. Someone in legal sent a breezy. Provisional doesn't mean final. Low risk to a short list and accidentally see CD half of engineering. The CTO's assistant replied all, "What do you mean we can't demo our own code?" Then, realizing the echo, followed with please delete. A UX designer posted a gif of a dumpster fire on wheels in a private Slack. The M. Pardon him for we are not okay. A senior engineer, careful and tired, typed, "We need a full origin audit before we go on stage." Product, coach to make calendars obey, answered. Where too close to pull, contain the blast radius. Eliza's letter did not threaten a neon. It pointed clause by clause. It mapped overlap between my filings and Apex's dependency. S. The predictive routing tree. The real-time balancing triggers. The ghost protocol's fallback logic. Dependent subsystems are not inspiration. The letter said in legal grammar, they are relia. Hence, she attached a diagram that made the room tilt if you knew how. To read it, an architecture in which the heart of Apex did not merely resemble my work. It beat because of it. She footnoted the week 1 NDA. Revision Lana has streamlined the clause that loosen. Alaric's claim over pre-existing IP developed outside active contract obligations. In trying to centralize, Lana had widened the crack. Eliza marked. D it with a neon arrow and the words see also. Estoppel. I was not in the building to watch the color drain from faces, but buildings talk. Someone passed me a screenshot of an internal thread, where Byron Sweet, dogged Byron asked, should we pause pending legal? And an exec replied, we can't afford to. They use the language of Treasury for a matter of custody. That's how you know a storm has moved from forecast to Windows. A contractor in the data team filed a formal note. Core module origin predates Apex repo. Recommend immediate council review. And got a thumbs up reaction emoji, the digital morphine for pain you plan to ignore. At 10:03 a.m., a private tech forum posted an anonymous tip. Ex-engineer serves patent interference warning. Apex demo in Jeopardy! It wasn't a splashy blog yet. It didn't need to be. In these circles, rumor is a ticker. Recruiters adjusted their outrage templates to include the word ethical. Investors texted each other abbreviated questions they pretended not to have time to ask in public. Meanwhile, the summit schedule continued its march toward the stage lights. Booth assignments were posted. Alaric, S number 207 looked out across an aisle at 2. Competitors whose teaser reels featured glossy dots dancing through urban grids. Those reels used real code, or so their eyes claimed, in conference room. Ms. with windows that stare at other conference rooms. A quiet war began. Legal pulled copies of the Apex repo and set to attorneys to read diffs like scripture. Product froze the press release and swapped the headline doc name to something that looked like a calendar reminder. Compliance drafted a memo that said nothing out loud and everything to those fluent in omission. Contractors who could read the horizon ended their engagements for capacity reasons. To intern badges were turned off after hours by mistake. They helped us reopen the tickets at dawn with apologies. That spelled future deposition ... Lana, I'm told. Laughed in the first meeting, not a cackle, more of a practiced exhale. Provisionals are just placeholders, she said, the way some yell. Annie says weather changes while standing on a beach that's actively narrowing. She quoted a friend in venture who once told her, you move forward and dare the rest to catch up. It's a line the T reads like courage and often mass logistics. When legal pointed to the willful clause, she countered with optics. The booth was paid for, the live stream scheduled, the lanyards already printed with slogans about bold and brilliant. We can't back out over a technicality, she said, using the word that executives save for obstacles measurable only by people with rulers. There is a rhythm to instituti. Bonal denial. First, minimize, then schedule around. Next, borrow certainty from marketing. Finally, admonish the room to be brave. The brave thing would have been to stop. The brave thing would have been to say, we build on someone else's work, and we will rectify that before we sell the future to strangers. Instead, the room did the thing rooms do when risk is abstract and applause is near. It told itself a story about how stories be. Facts! Eliza sent a second note that afternoon, gentler in tone and harder in consequence. Any continued use, demonstration, or marketing of the protected concepts may constitute willful infringement, she wrote, particularly in a for-profit context. She cited Title 35 again, added case law, closed with a suggestee. On that, Alaric acknowledged the issue and stand down. She did not threaten press. She did not need to. In a world trained to read receipts, the quiet thing carries farther, back channels hummed, Darlete. Exit me, they're saying it's nothing. It feels like something, I reply with the only chant I trust. Stay, observe, she sent back a single dot, the punctuation of someone learned. In that silence is evidence too. A manager I respected, once who has not respected me in years, emailed my personal address from a burner because cowardice can be resourceful. If this is you, he wrote, you should know they plan to proceed. I didn't answer. He wasn't asking. He was rehearsing a line for his future conscience. The day narrowed to its edges, in sand. Mateo, the camera that loved Lana's angles, warmed to its bulb. In a Midwest convention center, Paipan drape learned its shape. In a Slack channel only 3 people could see, an engineer pasted a code block in. D wrote, this logic tree is identical to Harlow's. Reading notes were not just close. Someone responded with a lock emoji. Someone else deleted the message and posted a cheerful update. About booth swag arrival times. Deletion leaves logs. Chair leaves a trail. I made tea in a heavy mug and stood at the window where the lake throws the afternoon back at the sky. I am not afraid of theater. I am allergic to pretending theater is physics. The plan was not to torch anyone on social, not to march onto a stage with a microphone, not to leak for sport. The plan was the place, and a ledger of custody, a letter of interference, a second letter that taught the word willful to a room that thought it was bluff. By evening, Alaric had to paths, stand down with language that sounded principled, or stand up under lights and discover that a system with its heart removed will not dance on cue. They chose the second path because the first felt like an admission. Here is what the memoized playbooks never tell you. The universe is terrible at faking a fallback. If you remove the layer that notices failure and heals, you can only pray no one notices. People all ways notice, if not in applause time, then in the quiet between headlines. The summit was now for dawns away. Investors had hotel rooms. Journalists had questions pre-written in their notes. Apps, the demo laptop had a fresh OS image and a portable fan under the table to keep it cool. A contractor glued Velcro to the back of a banner that tried to convince gravity of optimism. Wherein legal, someone printed Eliza's letters and slid them into a manila folder with a tiny metal fastener and a tab that would, in the future, bear my name. I washed the mug, dried it, set it down upside down on a towel, and turned my phone face down again. Precision had done its part. The rest optics, denial, spectacle would do what it always does. It would walk into a room and assume the room would bend. Rooms bend until they don't. Then they break. Loudly, and someone, somewhere, will call it unexpected. The carpet at the Midwestern Tech Frontiers Summit is the color of old PR. Omize's maroon pattern, determined to look expensive. Booth number 207 gleams under lease light. A banner that says APEX in a font chosen for confidence. A secondary monitor perched like a second. D-chance. A demo rig tucked behind black drape like a magician's box. Lana arrives in a blazer the color of overconfidence and heels that click like punctuation. Her entourage is an org chart on way. L's, 3 engineers to marketers, 1 intern named Celeste carrying a coil of HDMI like a rosary. She passes to competitors across the aisle whose teaser loops show dots gliding along maps without stew. And she does not look away. The MC introduces her as a forward-thinking voice in logistics innovation. It's the kind of phrase you say when you don't know what the code does, only with the press release promise. Cameras lift like periscopes. Investors stop mid-sip. Journalists uncap pins they'll later pretend are neutral. Lana smiles into the lights. The deck is slick, all gradients and courage today. She says, we're proud to debut Apex, predictive, adaptive. The future of intelligent routing, she gestures toward. The screen and the demo begins. For 20 seconds, everything works. The map loads, shipments blink to life. Simulated routes draw themselves with the confidence of a signature executed 100 times before people CL. AP, the way you clap for momentum on beat. Assuming the band will keep time, then the engine misses a note. The numbers in the corner hesitate. A red toast pops up in the corner like a raw. She Unhandled Exception. No logic group reference. Byron lunges for the laptop. His hands move with the calm panic of a person who has debugged under fluorescent lights at 2 a.m. He kills the win. Dow and relaunches the service for a heartbeat. It looks like it might recover, then the fallback tries to catch the falling plate and discovers it has no hands. The screen stutters, the dynamic. Reading collapses to zeros and a second red bar appears. Fallback module not found. A contractor steps forward, blonde, precise, hired for competence more than posture, and says what everyone has been tiptoeing around into a live mic. We couldn't legally use the original code. The sentence is a glass dropped in a cathedral. Somewhere, someone laughs by mistake. Elsewhere, paper stops moving. On stage, Lana's face performs a crash recovery routine smile, swallow, gesture, breathe. She speaks into the hush. Looks like we're having some technical difficulties. The MC takes a step no one meant to choreograph. The audience claps politely, the way you clap when a high school soloist misses a measure and you want to be kind to the teacher behind the pip. Ian Drake. He races to find an exit. Byron yanks the HDMI like it betrayed him. Celeste, Ernest, and Young ducks behind a column and lets the tears escape because her body hasn't. T learned how to store this yet. A cool voice finds Lana's ear through a headset. We can't go live with this. She nods at nothing. The banner still says APEX in its confident font. Compare. Idents a costume. It photographs well. The debrief room 3 doors. Down is corporate beige pretending to be modern. The table is U-shaped, a geometry that implies collaboration and delivers surveillance to board members. Flank the coup, legal sits with a pen like a scalpel. They don't offer coffee. Lana's phone lies face down. That, too, is theater. Corinne from General Counsel clears her throat with the ceremony of a person who knows the next word will move a line on a graph. The door opens without the knock of courtesy. Eliza Trent walks in like cause walking toward effect. Black blazer, manila envelope. She does not introduce herself. She slides the envelope to Corinne and says, Judith Harlow sends her regards. It is not a threat. It's a receipt being handed to the cashier who asks for one. Inside, a spreadsheet of commits with mirror data, origin timestamps, device IDs pinned to machines that never touched a Larix network. A notarized affidavit from Ravi Day, location, what age? E-witnessed, his signature under a stamp that leaves a faint sunburst in paper, a USB labeled January 17th audio. Corinne plugs it in. Lana's voice fills the room, crisp as a winter sky. If you don't like the new policies, Judith, you can just resign and go. A beat. You'll be fine. Honestly, your stuff is probably too technical for Apex anyway. A longer pause. Then the SE. Sentence that teaches an org chart how to blush once it's in the system. It's ours. That's how it works. Silence, the productive kind. Not awkward, architectural. Eliza lets it stay until the room is AR. Ranged around it, then speaks in a tone that wastes no nouns. Ms. Harlow's work was performed outside a Larix scope, on personal equipment, on personal time, with third-party witnesses and a notarized chai. And of custody, you have no claim under Title 35. Continued use or marketing after notice constitutes willful infringement. The older board member with tortoiseshell frames does not turn his head too. Look at Lana, he asks the air. Did we verify origin before we announced? The COO's hand tightens in a pen. Corinne closes the laptop as if it might detonate. No one says I told you so, but the sentence hums under the fluorescence. Eliza produces a single sheet, acknowledgement and retraction. It requests Alaric cease use, retract marketing, and issue a public clarification regarding GIP attribution. There is a blink line at the bottom where certainty goes. Corinne looks to the board. The older one nods. The younger one exhales through his nose like he's not yet Lear. Ned, the skill of silence. The pin moves. The blink line is no longer blank. They do not fire Lana in this room. That's not how institutions end stories. They let them taper. But he next morning, upstairs at 9 sharp, the board meets. Without her, a motion moves quietly. Revoke all admin access associated with Vice President Lana Reiser, effective immediately. Someone slides a tablet Howard IT. Fingers make policy into current. Downstairs, her badge remains polite until the elevator declines to accept it. The door to her office is still hers until it opens and informs her. Otherwise, Apex is executed, not shelved. No spare branding, no sunset, no pivot. The memo reads like a coroner, product termination liability risk. Compliance circulates a second document, IP attribution update, Apex logic framework. It names the person they tried not to know. Core intellectual property originated with former employee Judith A. Harlow. The sentence does not genuflect. It merely stands. PR drafts the kind of statement corporate uses to walk backwards without looking like it. We thank all contributors for their efforts and remain committed to ethical innovation. It is an apology the way clouds are a plan for rain. Off-site, a freelance journalist I spoke to 2 weeks prior publishes a piece with a headline that does what headlines should do. X. Engineer outmaneuvers employer with documentation. Flagship demo collapses. It isn't spicy. It doesn't need adjectives. The facts are enough. My inbox behaves like a slot machine. Recruiters. Discover the word respect. A startup CTO writes. If you're going to do this again, do it here. My phone buzzes with emojis from people who once copied my comments into their slide decks and forgot to include my name. Darla's message is the only one I read twice. Holy hell, you really did it. I answer with nothing, because Triumph is a volume I haven't used in years. And don't plan to start shouting in now. Across town, Alaric tries to stand up a fallback demo called Rotate, a name selected to sound modest after Audacity failed. They strip out anything that looks like me, except D. Appendance is a quieter glue than branding. When they run the sandbox, the load balancer refuses to initialize. An authentication module throws a red flag. A third-party API call fails. One Cine or dev clicks into a core file and finds a header that reads H#Harlow protocol. Do not modify without written authorization. They scrub, and the licensing checker auto-triggered by my namespace. HARLO.routing.v1 lights up like a conscience. Every attempt to rebuild without the original logic produces conflicts that behave like a physics demonstration. Remove the heart, and the machine performs. A lesson, not a product. Someone screenshots a Slack line and forwards it to a recruiter who forwards it to me. Because professional gossip is just a leaky aquifer, the line is from an engineer I've never met. She wasn't kidding. We built this on her work. I read it once. Then I pour coffee and read it again. Not for pleasure, but for clarity, vindication. It turned S out is quieter than expected. It doesn't arrive with champagne or a podium. It shows up as a change org chart, as an access badge that no longer works, as a memo that finally puts the right next to the right verb. I walk, later, into a building that smells like lemons and servers. A badge with my name this time spelled correctly lets me into a floor where patent PR protocols are not decorations. Viron Labs is not a pedestal. It's a platform. The title on the badge says Chief Patent Officer, which is less crown than Tool Belt. First order of business, design a chai, and of custody process that doesn't require war. Second, teach young engineers, especially the quiet ones, the ones who bring lemon bars, how to carry rulers and how to write receipts that will out. Last applause. On the bench at the lake, Squirrels argue over fries. Across town, AP, our intern, edits a sentence until it no longer says anything that can be sued. Somewhere, a board member tells himself a saying, or about how this was inevitable. Somewhere else, Byron closes his laptop and sleeps. I do not toast to anyone's ruin. I document. I breathe. I remember that the napkin in Kent was the first door I built, and that everything after was. Architecture support beams, cross-bracing, a ledger written in ink that dries hard. Precision cut deeper than the rage I could have chosen. It holds. It holds. There's a particular quiet that follows. A storm, the kind that doesn't ask you to celebrate so much as the inventory. In the weeks after Apex was executed, and the memos remembered my name without flinching, I learned to move through that. Quiet like a curator of cause and effect. Veron Labs gave me a badge with edges that didn't bite and a title that felt less like a throne, and more like a toolkit. Chief Patent Officer. The floor I walked into smelled like lemons and servers, a bright hum that said we build things here and we keep them safe. First task, install. A chain of custody that doesn't require a ward to be believed. Second, teach the quiet ones women, immigrants, anyone who has ever been told they are too in the weeds. How to. Carry rulers, levels, and ledgers the way others carry charm. My window faced a skyline that had learned its own geometry angles, glass, and a hint of weather. I taped the Kent napkin inside a Claris. Leave and clipped it near my monitor, not as a trophy, as a compass. Napkin to legal pad to code, code to filings, filings to letters, letters to consequences. You can call it vindication. I call it continuity. People think the moment of triumph is the guillotine drop. I think it's the ink drying in a notary's sunburst sill. That's when a story chooses to become S. Structure. At Veron we built a protocol so boring it felt like compassion. Design notebooks dated and countersigned. Device I dislodged from D0. Third-party witness forms built into sprints. The way code review is we trained product managers to love provenance, not just pitch. We ask new grads to observe, to document, to name. Ship truth, the poster in the hallway says, now. The shipping label includes origin. Engineers rolled their eyes up. Accusation ... across town. Alaric retreated from route take amid licensing concerns. A sentence that tastes like something boiled to remove all flavor. The board wrote a letter with the elegance of regret, but not the courage of apology. Byron, who is nobody's fool, sent me a note from a personal account that said, I learned T. 3 careers worth in 1 month. I wrote back, you learn to measure. Darla told me she was leaving to join a team where her name wouldn't be recycled into team whenever credit was C. Ounted, I asked her to interview at Veron and watched her shoulders lower. Half an inch when she saw our forms ask who built what, not just who approved it. I kept thinking about the social data we pretend not to see. Return to office policies marketed as collaboration, functioning as centralization. Repository directives branded as alignment but operating as custody claims. The statistically invisible labor of people like US who make engines sing and expect only not to be erased. In the postmortems I wrote for the team, I included footnotes with studies on who gets interrupted in meetings, on how CRE is attributed upward, on how fear of scarcity makes good people complicit in bad arithmetic. This isn't just law, I told them in our first training, it's culture. It's who gets to be visible when the lights go up. The lights go up at every demo, every all hands, every room where the mic moves toward the most confident jawline. The law can iron some wrinkles, the rest requires a different habit. Observation, inscription, insistence. People ask me, after the article ran, and the title on my badge calcified into policy, if I was happy. Happiness is a tricky measure, it leak. S. Contentment, I could find. Relief. Yes. Pride. In small rations, mostly I felt still. Vindication, if you've been starving for it, will tempt you to overeat. I didn't. I made tea in a heavy mug and walked to the lake where ducks still fought over bagels as if carbohydrates were a zero-sum game. The bagel is credit, the pond is infrastructure. Once you understand that, you stop throwing crumbs and start building shorelines. I think about Lana less than people expect, not because I forgive easily. I don't confuse boundaries with grace, but because a person can only be the villain end of your story if you surrender the pen. She taught me something valuable by performing something cruel. Visibility without substance is costume. Costumes are useful for photographs and fundraisers. They don't. Tea keep anyone warm. I wish her a kinder. Mirror, I wish everyone still inside a lyric a long memory and quick access to printers. You want philosophy. Here's what a decade of Lintrap work in a month of Cortretti documentation taught. Emmy, 1, measure twice. In code, in law, in the story you're telling yourself about your worth. 2, keep your tools near your name. Mac. Hina-itis. Notebooks, witnesses, hashes, timestamps, none of it is magical. All of it is mortal, which is to say, it can be lost unless you care enough to keep it. 3, when they say a line, ask where the sender is and who drew it. If the answer is the person with the microphone, check the math. 4, rage is a good spark, precision is the engine. I keep a copy of the word willful on my desk, printed in a font that refuses to apologize. Willful is what you become when you know the stakes and move anyway. It's what a corporation becomes when it knows the stakes and pretends the why are a deck slide, the lore awards, or punishes willful. So does history. So does the weird private ledger you carry in your chest that balances what you built against how you were treated. Virons. Founder wrote me a welcome email that ended with let's build smarter, not bigger, not louder, smarter. I printed it and taped it under the napkin. On Tuesdays, I host a brown bag session call. At Builders' Rights, we talk about NDAs that behave like bear traps, about the ethics of open source, and the obligation to acknowledge the shoulders we stand on, about the office politics of we th. It dissolves when the lights dim and the applause has been harvested. A 22-year-old raised her hand last week and asked, what if they still steal? I told her the truth. Sometimes they will, but your job is to turn theft from a rumor into a risk. Even the overconfident can understand. Your job is to make the next quiet person's path shorter by the length of your receipts. Some nights I walk home past a diner that serves pancakes after dark, and I think of Cher, the waitress who refilled my cup the night the ghost fell into place. I hope she's well. I hope someone refills her cup with the same unceremonious generosity she gave me. There are economies that matter more than the ones we file taxes for. Gratitude is one. So is the habit of saying the names of people who edited your drafts, proofed your math, and told you gently when your loop was infinite. To everyone who listened to this, and I know many of you are doing dishes, or riding the train, or hiding from a meeting that should have been an email, thank you. Thank you for staying until the end, for hearing the boring parts, the notarized parts, the parts that don't sparkle but hold the ceiling up. I don't toast to anyone's ruin. I lift a mug to every builder who has ever sat under fluorescent lights and stitched the guts of a system so it wouldn't fail in public. Your work is not invisible because no one sees it. It's invisible because it's working. Document it. Say your name out loud in rooms that prefer you whisper. Plant flags where the timeline bends. I wish you good health, enough sleep, and a family born or chosen that says your name with the right verb next to it. May your inbox bring offers that respect you, and may your badge grant access to rooms where the door opens. Because you built the hinges, if this story gave you a map, even a corner of one, I'd be grateful if you subscribed, shared, or just sent it to the person in your org who always brings moan bars and never takes credit. They're the reason the lights stayed on. They deserve a ledger, a level, and a little less weather. Thanks for the exit strategy. I said once, half a laugh, half a line. Now I say it with my hands on the blueprint. Thanks for the lesson. We're building smarter.